At an elegant art fair, a pregnant woman faces a night that will change her life forever. As she walks among sculptures and conversations, the tension in her marriage becomes unbearable. Discovering her husband's lover is only the beginning of an unexpected transformation. What seemed like a simple social evening becomes a crucial turning point in her life. The May night in London was enveloped in a special atmosphere. The lights of the Royal Academy of Arts Pavilion reflected on the polished marble floor, creating a play of shadows and gleams that danced to the rhythm of animated conversations. Guests, dressed in their most elegant attire, circulated among modern sculptures and canvases by renowned artists, champagne flutes in hand, and carefully rehearsed smiles on their faces. That was the opening night of the Spring Art Gala, the most anticipated event of London's cultural season, bringing together collectors, critics, entrepreneurs, and celebrities in one place. For Mary Ann Alistair, that Thursday had a different flavor. At 32 years old and 5 months pregnant, she walked through the main hall with measured steps, trying to balance the natural elegance that had always characterized her with the growing discomfort her condition brought. Her champagne-colored silk dress fell perfectly over her modified curves, skillfully disguising the belly that was beginning to show. The pearl necklace her grandmother had left her as an inheritance adorned her neck, reflecting the soft light of the Venetian chandeliers. Mary Ann knew she looked beautiful, but inside she felt a malaise that had nothing to do with pregnancy hormones. Her husband, Raphael Alistair, walked a few steps ahead of her. Tall, broad-shouldered, and with perfectly combed dark hair, Raphael commanded attention wherever he went. At 35, he had built an empire in the luxury real estate market, transforming his family business into one of London's most respected. Dressed in an impeccable Italian suit, he greeted acquaintances, exchanged firm handshakes, and distributed confident smiles. Mary Ann watched his every move, noting how he barely looked back to check if she was keeping up. His indifference was nothing new, but that night it seemed more evident, more painful. Mary Ann picked up a glass of natural orange juice from a passing tray and took a deep breath. Her obstetrician had authorized her presence at the event, provided she avoided stress and standing for too long. But how could she avoid stress when her marriage was slowly crumbling, like a sand sculpture being washed away by the tide? She took a sip and let the citrus liquid refresh her dry throat. 3 weeks earlier, Mary Ann had discovered something that changed everything. It hadn't happened dramatically or cinematically. There were no suspicious messages on his phone or lipstick on shirt collars. The truth had come to her almost trivially through a friend who had seen him at a discreet restaurant in Mayfair, accompanied by a young and clearly intimate woman. When Mary Ann confronted Raphael that same night, she expected tears of regret, apologies, perhaps even an honest confession. Instead, she received coldness and denial. Raphael had denied everything with disconcerting confidence. He accused Mary Ann's friend of inventing gossip. He said Mary Ann was too sensitive because of the pregnancy, seeing problems where none existed. He questioned if she really wanted to create unnecessary drama at such a delicate moment in their lives, awaiting their first child. His words were so convincing, so carefully chosen, that Mary Ann even doubted herself. Perhaps she was exaggerating. Perhaps the hormones really were affecting her judgment. For the love of the baby she carried, she decided to swallow her suspicions and try to maintain peace. But peace was a fragile illusion. Mary Ann felt the distance between them growing every day. Raphael spent more time at the office, came home late, was always too busy for the conversations they used to have. His hands no longer sought her belly to feel the baby's movements. Goodnight kisses had turned into mechanical, empty gestures. The man she had married 3 years earlier seemed to have been replaced by a polite stranger who shared the same roof. Mary Ann stopped before a contemporary art installation, a structure of metal and glass that, according to the information plaque, represented the fragility of human connections. How ironic, she thought. Her own connections were falling apart, and there she was, pretending to admire art while her life crumbled. A group of women passed her, laughing loudly at some inside joke. Mary Ann vaguely recognized them as wives of businessmen who frequented the same social circles. They greeted her with polished smiles and quick glances at her belly, as if assessing her condition. Mary Ann smiled back, activating the social autopilot that years of events like that had perfected. As they moved away, Mary Ann felt a slight pressure in her abdomen. Nothing worrying, just the baby stirring, reminding her of his presence. She discreetly placed her hand on her belly, a silent connection between mother and child. That little being depended completely on her, and Mary Ann felt the weight of that responsibility as never before. Every decision she made from then on would affect not only her, but also the innocent creature growing within her. Raphael suddenly appeared beside her, making her jump slightly in surprise. He held a glass of whiskey and had a slightly irritated expression on his face. "We need to circulate more," he said in a low voice, almost a harsh whisper. "You've been standing here for 10 minutes. People will find it strange." Mary Ann stared at him, feeling a spark of anger ignite in her chest. "I'm 5 months pregnant, Raphael. I need to rest occasionally," he sighed impatiently. "Then perhaps you shouldn't have come." His words were like a slap. Mary Ann felt tears threaten to rise, but she swallowed them back forcefully. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Not there, not in front of all those people. "You were the one who insisted I come," she reminded him, keeping her voice firm. "You said it would be strange if I didn't show up." Raphael shrugged and looked away, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. "I'm just saying you look tired. People will notice." Before Mary Ann could reply, someone called Raphael from across the hall. It was an important business partner beckoning him over. Raphael mumbled a vague excuse and quickly walked away, leaving Mary Ann alone again. She watched her husband walk away, the feeling of loneliness growing in her chest like a dark stain. How had they reached that point? When had love transformed into resentment? When had promises of eternal complicity become empty conversations about social appearances? Mary Ann decided to walk to the pavilion's outdoor area, where there was a garden lit with Japanese lanterns. The cool night air welcomed her like a gentle embrace, and she took a deep breath, filling her lungs. Some people were circulating there too, but in smaller numbers, allowing for a little more privacy. It was then that she saw her. On the other side of the garden, near a water fountain, stood a woman Mary Ann had never seen before, but instantly recognized. She didn't need confirmation, she didn't need proof. Her instinct screamed the truth as soon as her eyes landed on her. The woman was young, perhaps 25, with long, straight hair falling perfectly over her shoulders. She wore a wine-red dress that hugged every curve of her slender body, and a silver clutch gleamed under the garden lights. She was beautiful in an obvious and calculated way, the kind of beauty that demanded constant maintenance and dedication. And she was looking directly at Mary Ann. Their eyes met for a moment that seemed to stretch indefinitely. Mary Ann saw something in that woman's gaze that chilled her to the core, a mix of satisfaction and defiance. There was no doubt, no room for alternative interpretations. That was the woman Raphael was having an affair with, and she knew exactly who Mary Ann was. Mary Ann's heart quickened in a way that even the baby seemed to feel stirring restlessly in her womb. She looked away first, refusing to participate in that silent power game. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the empty glass on a nearby table. She needed to get out of there, go back inside, find Raphael, do anything but stand there being watched like prey by that woman. But when she took the first step towards the pavilion entrance, she noticed that the woman in red was also moving. Not in the opposite direction, as would be sensible. She was coming towards Mary Ann with determined steps and a smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. Mary Ann thought of fleeing, of simply turning her back and entering the hall, losing herself in the crowd. But something within her, a remnant of dignity or perhaps pure stubbornness, made her stand still. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't show fear or weakness. If that woman wanted a confrontation, she would get it. But on Mary Ann's terms, not hers. The distance between them narrowed until they were just a few steps from each other. Up close, Mary Ann could better observe the details. The woman was indeed beautiful, but there was something artificial about her appearance. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows, overly long eyelashes, lips filled with an almost exaggerated symmetry. She smelled of an expensive and intense perfume, which invaded the space around her like a declaration of territory. "What a beautiful night, isn't it?" the woman said, her voice soft but laden with an emotion Mary Ann couldn't fully identify. A mix of animosity and something more, perhaps jealousy or morbid curiosity. Mary Ann forced a polite smile, the kind she used with insistent saleswomen in luxury stores. "It is. The event is very well organized." The Sao woman took another step closer, deliberately invading Mary Ann's personal space. "I came especially to see the new installations. I love contemporary art. And you? Did you come because of your husband? I imagine he has many important contacts here." The mention of Raphael was like a punch to Mary Ann's stomach, so she really knew who Mary Ann was, confirming all her suspicions. She wanted to ask how the woman knew her, wanted to confront her directly, but something stopped her. Perhaps it was the public setting, or perhaps it was the instinct for self-preservation screaming at her not to cause a scene that could backfire. "I came because I like art," Mary Ann replied, keeping her voice firm despite the whirlwind of emotions. "And you? Are you accompanied tonight?" The woman's smile widened, taking on a predatory quality. "I'm alone, but I don't mind. In fact, I prefer it that way. More freedom to appreciate everything without distractions." Mary Ann understood the subtext perfectly. That woman was boasting about her independence, contrasting it with Mary Ann's condition, pregnant and tied to a crumbling marriage. It was a subtle but effective attack. Before Mary Ann could reply, the woman deliberately looked at her belly. "And how are you feeling? It must be tiring to circulate so much at events like this. I wouldn't dare leave the house in that condition." The false concern in her voice was so transparent that Mary Ann almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, a subtle gesture of defiance her mother had taught her years ago. "My doctor fully authorized me. Pregnancy is not an illness, and I don't intend to hide until the baby is born." "Of course not," the woman agreed, but there was a malicious glint in her eyes. "I just find your dedication admirable. Not everyone has such strength." The silence that followed was tense and charged. Mary Ann felt her heart beating too fast, and a rational part of her mind warned her to back away, to end that conversation before it escalated into something worse. But the other part, the hurt and angry part, wanted to continue, wanted to prove to that woman that she was not weak, that she would not be intimidated. It was then that she saw Raphael leaving the main hall, his eyes scanning the garden as if looking for someone. When his gaze found the two women together, Mary Ann saw something cross his face. It wasn't exactly fear, but a kind of controlled panic, as if he had just realized that two worlds that needed to remain separate had collided. He started walking towards them, trying to maintain a neutral expression, but Mary Ann knew him too well. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he clenched his jaw. And when she looked again at the woman in red, she saw that she had also noticed Raphael, and the smile on her face had transformed into something different, something between satisfaction and anxiety. "Mary Ann," Raphael called as he approached, completely ignoring the other woman. "I was looking for you. Dinner is about to start in a few minutes." He extended his hand to Mary Ann in a way that seemed strangely possessive, as if marking territory. She looked at his hand, hesitant for a moment before accepting it. His palm was slightly damp with sweat. The woman in red watched the scene with an interest she made no attempt to disguise. Her eyes went from Raphael to Mary Ann and back again, as if studying every detail of that interaction. Raphael, finally recognizing that he couldn't completely ignore her without seeming rude, gave a brief nod. "Good evening." "Good evening, Raphael," the woman replied, and her use of his first name confirmed everything Mary Ann needed to know. Raphael's discomfort was palpable now. He gently pulled Mary Ann by the arm, trying to guide her back to the pavilion. "Come on, darling. Our table must be ready." But Mary Ann didn't move immediately. She looked at the woman in red one last time. Memorizing every detail of that face, she wanted to engrave in her memory the appearance of the person who was destroying her marriage, who was stealing her child's father. "It was a pleasure to meet you," Mary Ann said, her voice laden with a double meaning that went unnoticed by no one there. "The pleasure was all mine," the woman replied, And that smile returned, defiant and triumphant. Raphael practically dragged Marianne back into the pavilion. As soon as they were far enough away, he released her arm and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she knew well. "Who was that woman?" Marianne asked, though she already knew the answer. "I have no idea," Raphael lied without even looking at her. "Probably some acquaintance from the art events. You know how it is, new faces always appear." "She knew your name," Marianne pointed out. "Many people know my name, Marianne," he retorted, irritation showing in his voice. "I'm a businessman. I can't control who knows me." Marianne was about to reply, about to expose him right there, but at that moment a couple of their friends approached, smiling and greeting them effusively. Raphael's expression changed instantly, transforming him into the charming and sociable man everyone knew. Marianne played her part too, smiling and exchanging pleasantries, while inside she felt her world crumble a little more. And throughout the conversation, she couldn't stop thinking about the woman in red, about that defiant smile. And she knew that night was only just beginning. The dining hall of the Royal Academy of Arts Pavilion had been transformed into a stunning setting, round tables covered with immaculate white tablecloths spread across the space, each decorated with floral arrangements combining white roses and tropical foliage. The lights had been dimmed, creating an intimate atmosphere, and tall candles in silver. Candelabras completed the sophisticated decor. A string quartet played softly in a corner, adding a layer of sonic elegance to the ambience. Marianne and Raphael were led to a table near the center of the hall, where 4 other guests were already seated, all familiar faces from London's business social circle. There was Robert Townsend, owner of a luxury hotel chain, and his wife Claudia, a middle-aged woman with more plastic surgeries than Marianne could count. Also present were Marcus and Julia Fitzgerald, a younger couple who had made their fortune in the technology market. Introductions were made, handshakes exchanged, and everyone settled into their seats. Marianne sat between Raphael and Claudia, a position that normally wouldn't bother her, but that night every detail seemed laden with meaning. Raphael pulled out her chair with mechanical courtesy, and Marianne sat down, adjusting her dress over her legs. The conversation at the table began naturally, revolving around the expected topics for events like that: the exhibited works, rising artists, rumors about a painting that had been sold for an absurd amount, even before the official opening of the event. Marianne participated when necessary, smiling at the right moments, making appropriate comments. But her mind was elsewhere. Her eyes discreetly scanned the hall, looking for the woman in red, and it didn't take long to find her. Isabella Carter, Marianne had discovered her name when she heard someone greet her at the entrance of the hall, was sitting 3 tables ahead, in a position that gave her a clear view of the table where Marianne and Raphael were seated. Isabella was not alone. She shared the table with what appeared to be other professionals from the art world, all young and elegant. But while her table, companions chatted animatedly, Isabella seemed more interested in observing, and the object of her observation was obvious, at least to Marianne. The first course was served, a sophisticated starter of octopus carpaccio with Sicilian lemon emulsion. Marianne picked up her fork, but could barely taste the food. Her throat seemed closed, and each bite required conscious effort to swallow. Raphael, beside her, seemed more relaxed now that they were surrounded by other people, with safe and predictable conversations happening around them. He even placed his hand on Marianne's at one point when Claudia made a comment about how eager they must be for the baby's arrival. The gesture was brief, almost automatic, but Marianne noticed how quickly he withdrew his hand, as if he had touched something hot. In the middle of the second course, a porcini mushroom risotto that Marianne barely touched, she saw Raphael glance quickly towards Isabella's table. It was a subtle movement, too quick for anyone else to notice, but Marianne was attentive to every detail. And when she saw Isabella respond with an equally brief look, followed by a small smile at the corner of her lips, her stomach churned. "Marianne, you've barely touched your food," Julia Fitzgerald commented, her voice laden with genuine concern. "Are you feeling all right?" Everyone at the table turned their attention to Marianne, and she felt the heat rise from her neck to her cheeks. "I'm fine, thank you. It's just that being pregnant, some flavors become too intense. My doctor said it's normal. Raphael immediately assumed the role of concerned husband. Do you want me to order something else for you? Perhaps something lighter? His hypocrisy was so blatant that Marianne had to bite her tongue not to say something she would regret. No need, I'm fine as I am. The conversation resumed its course, and Marianne took the opportunity to get up, excusing herself to go to the restroom. She needed a few minutes away from that table, away from Raphael and his perfect performance as a devoted husband. The women's restroom was a refuge of marble and mirrors, silent and cool. Marianne entered one of the cubicles and simply stood there for a few moments, breathing deeply, trying to calm her frayed nerves. When she came out, she slowly washed her hands, observing her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were slightly reddish, and she took a tissue from her purse to dry the corners, where stubborn tears threatened to escape. She was reapplying her lipstick when the restroom door opened and Isabella Carter walked in. The encounter was so obviously orchestrated that Marianne felt a wave of anger wash over her. That woman had followed her there. What a coincidence, Isabella said, her tone making it clear there was no coincidence about that encounter. Marianne didn't reply, just continued looking at her own reflection, refusing to give Isabella the satisfaction of a reaction. Isabella approached the sink next to her, opening her silver purse and taking out a dark red lipstick. She began applying it with slow, deliberate movements, clearly in no hurry to leave. You know, Isabella continued when the silence became too heavy, I love this event. I always meet interesting people here. Sometimes I even run into old acquaintances. Marianne finally looked at her through the mirror. Acquaintances? Isabella smiled, putting the lipstick back in her purse. Yes, people I've met in other contexts. It's a small city, London, despite its size. Social circles overlap in surprising ways. The message was clear. Isabella was saying she knew Raphael, that he was part of her circle, her world, and she wanted Marianne to know it. Marianne turned to face her directly, no longer through the mirror. What exactly do you want from me? Isabella widened her eyes in feigned innocence. Me? Nothing. I was just making conversation. Why the hostility? I'm not an idiot, Marianne said, her voice low but firm. I know exactly what you're doing. Isabella tilted her head, the smile never leaving her face. And what am I doing, Marianne? Hearing her own name come from those lips was like a shock. Isabella knew her name, obviously having heard it from Raphael, and using that knowledge was another way of marking territory. Before Marianne could reply, the restroom door opened again and two other women entered, laughing at something one of them had just said. The bubble of tension between Marianne and Isabella broke instantly. Isabella gave a final smile and left without saying another word. Marianne waited a few seconds, composing herself before leaving as well. When she returned to the dining hall, the main course was being served. A beef tenderloin in red wine sauce accompanied by grilled vegetables. She sat in her place, and Raphael cast a questioning glance at her. You took a while, he commented in a low voice. There was a queue, Marianne lied. The rest of dinner passed in a haze. Marianne forced herself to eat a few pieces of meat, knowing she needed to keep her strength for the baby. She mechanically participated in conversations, laughed when expected, nodded in agreement when appropriate. But inside she was at war with herself, debating what to do about that unsustainable situation. When dinner finally ended, and guests began to rise for coffee and dessert in a separate area, Marianne saw her chance to escape a little more. She told Raphael she needed some fresh air, that the indoor environment was too hot for her. He seemed relieved by her departure, which did not go unnoticed. Do you want me to come with you? No need, Marianne replied. I'm just going to the garden for a few minutes. She walked back to the outdoor area, where the night air greeted her with its comforting coolness. There were fewer people there. Now, as most were inside enjoying dessert, Marianne found a bench near the fountain and sat down, finally allowing her shoulders to relax. But the peace was short-lived. Footsteps approached, and Marianne didn't even need to look to know who it was. Isabella sat down beside her without asking permission, too close, invading Marianne's personal space once again. That necklace is beautiful, Isabella said, her eyes fixed on the pearls adorning Marianne's neck. Cultured or natural? And Marianne knew at that moment that the night was about to take a turn that would change everything. Marianne looked at Isabella, processing the question about the necklace. There was something in the way she had asked the question, a familiarity that shouldn't exist. "They are cultured pearls," Marianne replied cautiously. "They were my grandmother's." "How lovely," Isabella murmured, and then added with a voice laden with thinly veiled malice, "Raphael has already told me about that necklace. He said it was a very important family heirloom for you." Marianne's world seemed to stop for a second. Her stomach churned, and she felt a brief but intense dizziness. Raphael had talked about the necklace with that woman. He had shared intimate details of their life, stories that belonged only to the couple. The betrayal was not just physical, it was also emotional, a complete violation of the trust that should exist between husband and wife. Marianne abruptly rose from the bench, needing to put distance between herself and Isabella. Her heart pounded, and she could feel the baby stirring, as if responding to its mother's stress. "I need to go," she said, her voice coming out more tremulous than she would have liked. But Isabella also rose, following Marianne with quick steps. "Wait, Marianne, you don't need to run from me." "I'm not running from anything," Marianne retorted, stopping and turning to face her. "I just see no reason to continue this conversation." Isabella took a few more steps closer, reducing the space between them again. The light from the garden lanterns created dramatic shadows on her face, accentuating the smile playing on her lips. "You know, you don't have to pretend with me. I know you know about me and Raphael." The direct confirmation spoken aloud was like a punch to the stomach. Even though she was sure, even though she knew deep in her soul what was happening, hearing those words spoken with such tranquility was devastating. Marianne opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. What could she say? How could she react to such a brazen confession? "Nothing to say," Isabella provoked, taking another step. "I thought you'd be more combative, but apparently you prefer to pretend nothing is happening. Very convenient, isn't it? Especially now that you're pregnant and vulnerable." The mention of her condition was the last straw. The anger Marianne had been swallowing since that night finally found its voice. "How dare you? How dare you approach me, speak to me, provoke me? Have you no shame?" Isabella laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Shame? Why? I didn't make any promises to you. I wasn't the one who swore fidelity before an altar. If anyone should feel shame here, it's Raphael. But he's too weak to admit what he feels." "What he feels?" Marianne repeated, incredulous. "Do you think Raphael feels anything for you beyond fleeting physical attraction?" Isabella crossed her arms, her defensive posture betraying the confidence she tried to project. "You know nothing about us." "About what?" "We share." "Share?" Marianne felt a bitter laugh escape. "You're the mistress, the other woman, the one he amuses himself with when he's bored with real life. Don't delude yourself into thinking it's more than that." The words hit their mark. Marianne saw Isabella's mask of superiority crack for a moment, revealing the insecurity beneath, but anger quickly took the place of doubt. "You're wrong," Isabella hissed, approaching even closer until their faces were mere inches apart. "Raphael is with me because he wants to be, because he found in me what you can no longer give him. Look at you, pregnant, tired, stuck in a role no man truly wants from his wife. I am everything you are not. Young, free, interesting." Every word was a sharp blade, cutting deep. Marianne felt tears burn her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give Isabella the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "My doctor said a little stress wouldn't hurt," Marianne said, forcing her voice to remain firm. "But this has gone beyond mild stress. If you'll excuse me, I'm going back inside." She tried to pass Isabella, but the woman blocked her way, placing herself directly in front of her. The hostility on her face was clear now, without any pretense of civility. "Are you afraid to hear the truth?" Isabella challenged. "Afraid to admit your perfect marriage is a lie?" "Get out of my way," Marianne said, her voice low but imbued with an authority that surprised even herself. Isabella didn't move. Instead, her eyes fixed again on the pearl necklace. "That necklace," she said, her voice full of venom. "Raphael said you never take it off, that it's your most precious possession. Funny how you cling to dead things, relics of a past that won't return." Before Marianne could process what was happening, Isabella reached out and grabbed the necklace. Marianne felt the tug, the pearls pressing against her skin. "What are you doing? Let go of that." But Isabella didn't let go. Instead, she pulled hard, her eyes gleaming with irrational anger. Marianne tried to hold the necklace, pulling it back, but Isabella was determined. And then it happened. With a final violent tug, the string holding the pearls broke. The sound was almost silent, a soft snap that contrasted with the violence of the act. The pearls began to fall one by one, rolling across the stone pavement of the garden with small dry sounds. Some fell onto the grass, others rolled towards the fountain, disappearing into the darkness. Marianne stood paralyzed for a moment, her hand instinctively going to her bare neck where the necklace should have been. Then, almost as a reflex, her other hand went to her belly, protecting the baby. She felt a slight contraction, a bodily response to the sudden stress, but nothing to indicate immediate danger. "What have you done?" Marianne whispered, looking at the pearls scattered at her feet. Isabella still held the remnants of the necklace in her hand, the broken string dangling between her fingers. She looked at what she had done, and for a brief second seemed startled by her own action, but pride and anger quickly masked any regret. "It was an accident," she said, but her voice carried no conviction. "Accident?" Marianne's voice rose. "You deliberately tore my necklace off." Several people who were in the garden began to approach, drawn by the commotion. Marianne saw a small group forming around them, curious and shocked faces observing the scene. Among the people who approached was Henry Albright, a renowned artist who was the main highlight of the event. He had witnessed the entire scene, and Marianne saw that he had his phone in his hand, filming. "I saw everything," Henry said loud enough for everyone to hear. "She attacked you. She intentionally tore off your necklace." Isabella turned pale as she realized there were witnesses, that her actions could not be denied or distorted. "That's not what happened," she tried, but her voice sounded weak and unconvincing. Marianne took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm despite her racing heart and trembling hands. She looked at the people around, then at Isabella, and finally at Henry and his camera. "Everyone saw," Marianne said clearly, her voice projecting so that every person present could hear. "Everyone saw what she did. She attacked me, attacked a pregnant woman in public." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with the weight of the consequences that were only just beginning to unfold. The garden of the Royal Academy of Arts Pavilion had transformed into an impromptu stage where a real drama unfolded, before watchful eyes. More people began to emerge from the main hall, drawn by the murmurs that spread rapidly among the guests. A circle of onlookers formed around Marianne and Isabella, all whispering among themselves, some with phones raised, capturing every second of that scene. Marianne remained standing, one hand still protecting her belly, the other hanging by her side. Her eyes scanned the pearls scattered across the floor, each representing not just a lost jewel, but a piece of her family heritage now destroyed. That necklace had passed through generations, survived wars and changes, only to end up shattered in the hands of a woman, driven by jealousy and arrogance. Isabella had taken a few steps back, still holding the remnants of the necklace. Her face, previously full of confidence and malice, now showed signs of thinly veiled panic. She looked around, realizing that the situation had completely spiraled out of her control. "Someone should call security," a female voice said among the onlookers. "They're already coming," another person replied. Henry Albright, the artist who had filmed everything, approached Marianne with a serious expression. "Mrs. Alistair, are you all right? Do you need medical assistance?" The genuine concern in his voice touched Marianne in an unexpected way. Amidst all that falsity and betrayal, here was someone who truly cared about her well-being. "I'm fine, thank you. Just a little shaken." "I filmed everything," Henry said, showing his phone. "From the moment she ripped off the necklace. It's clear proof of aggression." Isabella finally found her voice again, though it sounded shrill and defensive. "Aggression? Don't be ridiculous. It was an accident, an argument that got out of hand. No one was hurt." "You physically attacked a pregnant woman," Henry retorted firmly. "This is not a simple accident. I saw everything, and my recording clearly shows your intentions." 2 event security guards arrived at that moment, clearing a path through the crowd. They were tall, robust men with impeccable uniforms and professional expressions. "What's happening here?" Mary Ann took a deep breath and explained with a surprisingly calm voice. "This woman attacked me. She violently ripped my necklace from my neck. There are witnesses and recordings to prove it." One of the guards looked at Henry, who confirmed with a nod. "I have everything recorded here. I can send a copy if needed." Isabella, realizing she was cornered, tried one last maneuver. "She's exaggerating. We were just talking, and the necklace accidentally broke. It wasn't intentional." The second guard began asking onlookers to step back, but kept Mary Ann, Isabella, and Henry there. "We need to record this incident. Both ladies will have to accompany us to give a formal statement." It was at that moment that Raphael finally appeared, pushing his way through the crowd with a confused and slightly irritated expression. "Mary Ann, what's going on? They told me there was some trouble." He stopped as he saw the scene before him. Isabella, pale and nervous, holding the remnants of a necklace. Mary Ann with a bare neck and an expression of contained pain on her face. The pearls scattered across the floor, the security guards, the people watching. Mary Ann saw the exact moment Raphael understood the situation, saw panic cross his face before he could mask it. He looked from Mary Ann to Isabella, and in that single glance Mary Ann saw much more than she would have liked. There was concern there, but it wasn't directed at her. It was for Isabella. "Raphael, she's saying I assaulted her," Isabella said quickly before Mary Ann could speak. "But it wasn't like that. It was an accident. You need to explain it to them." Raphael stood paralyzed, clearly not knowing how to handle that explosive situation. I'm sure it was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Mary Ann's voice came out louder than she intended. "She ripped my grandmother's necklace from my neck, Raphael. The necklace, you know how much it means to me. And you call that a misunderstanding?" "Mary Ann, let's calm down," Raphael said, extending his hands in a placating gesture that only increased her anger. "Don't tell me to calm down," Mary Ann retorted, feeling tears finally escape and roll down her face. "Not when you clearly already knew who she is. Not when your first reaction was to defend her instead of worrying about me." The silence that followed was awkward. Everyone present had understood the implication of Mary Ann's words. All eyes turned to Raphael, awaiting his response. But before he could say anything, a female voice cut through the air. "Mary Ann!" Mary Ann turned and saw her sister Beatrice running towards her. Beatrice was 28 and worked as a lawyer at a reputable firm in London. She had been invited to the event through professional contacts and was in another area of the pavilion when she learned of the incident. Beatrice reached Mary Ann's side and immediately wrapped her in a protective hug. "What happened? Are you all right? Is the baby okay?" "I'm fine, Bea," Mary Ann replied, using her sister's affectionate nickname. "But she pointed to Isabella, attacked me." Beatrice looked at Isabella with an expression that could freeze hell. Then her eyes turned to Raphael, and the contempt in her gaze was unmistakable. Beatrice had never liked Raphael, always thinking he wasn't good enough for her sister, and now she had confirmation that her instincts were right. "I'm getting you out of here," Beatrice said firmly. But first she turned to the security guards. "I want to ensure this incident is properly recorded. My sister was assaulted, and there is clear evidence of it. I expect appropriate action to be taken." One of the guards nodded. "We've already called the police to make an official report, and we also have the event's security camera footage." Isabella paled even further at the mention of the police. Raphael ran a hand through his hair, clearly desperate to control the situation that was completely spiraling out of his hands. Henry Albright was already sharing the video via his phone. Mary Ann saw him typing quickly, and seconds later heard notification sounds echoing from several people's phones around them. The video was spreading, going viral in real time across social media. "Raphael, we need to talk," Isabella said, her voice almost desperate. "Not now," Raphael replied brusquely, revealing more about their relationship than he intended. Beatrice gently took Mary Ann's hand. "Let's go. You don't need to stay here and endure any more embarrassment." "But first," Mary Ann said, turning to the security guards, "I want to give my full statement. I want everything to be officially recorded." She spent the next half hour recounting the night's events to the security guards and then to the police officers who arrived. She described every detail, from the first encounter with Isabella in the garden to the moment the necklace was ripped off. Henry handed over a copy of the video to the authorities, and other witnesses confirmed Mary Ann's version. Throughout that time, Raphael remained at a distance, observing but not approaching. Isabella also gave her statement, trying to minimize the incident, but the evidence against her was irrefutable. When everything finally ended, Beatrice guided Mary Ann out of the pavilion. Raphael tried to approach. "Mary Ann, let me take you home." "No," Mary Ann replied firmly. "I'm going with Beatrice." "But I'm your husband." "For now," Mary Ann interrupted, and the words hung in the air like a sentence. She turned her back on Raphael and walked towards Beatrice's car without looking back. And for the first time in months, Mary Ann felt something other than pain and anguish. She felt determination. The days that followed the incident at the Spring Art Gala were like a hurricane, sweeping everything in its path. Mary Ann woke up the next morning at Beatrice's house in a cozy guest room with soft blue painted walls. Sunlight streamed through the white linen curtains, and for a brief moment, before her mind fully awoke, she almost forgot everything that had happened. But then reality came rushing back, and she brought her hand to her bare neck, feeling the absence of the pearl necklace like an open wound. Beatrice gently knocked on the door before entering, carrying a tray with coffee, warm croissants, and natural orange juice. "Good morning, sis. How did you sleep?" Mary Ann sat up in bed, adjusting the pillows behind her back. "Surprisingly well, considering everything. I think the exhaustion was stronger than the stress." Beatrice placed the tray on Mary Ann's lap and sat on the edge of the bed. "I have something you need to see. I didn't want to show you immediately, but I think it's better you know." She picked up her phone and opened a social media app. The screen was full of shares of the video recorded by Henry Albright the previous night. The video already had millions of views and thousands of comments. Hashtags related to the incident were among the trending topics of the moment. Mary Ann watched the video with a mixture of emotions. She saw herself there, trying to maintain calm and dignity, while Isabella attacked her. She saw the exact moment the necklace broke, the pearls falling to the floor. She saw her own hand instinctively going to her belly, protecting the baby, and she saw the shocked faces of the witnesses around. The comments were mostly supportive of Mary Ann. People expressed indignation at Isabella's behavior, criticized her aggression towards a pregnant woman, and speculated about the motives behind the attack. Some had identified Isabella and were already investigating her past, exposing details of her life on social media. "This is surreal," Mary Ann murmured, handing the phone back to Beatrice. "Public opinion is entirely on your side," Beatrice said. "Isabella Carter is being crucified online. I've already seen several posts from companies saying they're going to terminate contracts with her. Her career as an art consultant is practically over." Mary Ann felt no satisfaction from that news, just a strange emptiness. "I never wanted to destroy anyone's life. I just wanted her to leave me alone." "She destroyed her own life when she decided to attack you publicly," Beatrice corrected. "The consequences are a direct result of her choices." During the following week, Mary Ann remained at Beatrice's house, avoiding contact with Raphael beyond what was strictly necessary. He called constantly, sent messages, tried to arrange meetings to talk. But Mary Ann wasn't ready. Every time she saw his name on her phone screen, she felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and disappointment that was physical in its intensity. Raphael finally managed to find her when she went to the apartment they had shared to pick up some clothes and personal items. He was waiting, sitting in what used to be their living room, looking tired with deep circles under his eyes. "Mary Ann, we need to talk," he said as soon as he saw her enter. "There's nothing to talk about, Raphael," she replied, heading directly to the bedroom. He followed her, desperate. "Please listen to me. I made a huge mistake, I know that. But we can get through this, for our son's sake." Mary Ann stopped and turned to face him. "For our son's sake. Did you think about our son when you started an affair with that woman? Did you think about him when you made me look crazy for suspecting you? Did you think about him when you defended her in public after she attacked me?" Every word was an accusation, and Raphael cringed under their weight. "I was confused," he tried. "Isabella was a distraction, a lapse in judgment. But it's you I love. It's you I want to spend the rest of my life with." "Perhaps that was true a few months ago," Mary Ann said, her voice calmer now, but laden with sadness. "But you destroyed everything we had. The trust, the respect, the love. You can't just rebuild that because you've decided you want to." "Mary Ann, please." "I'm filing for divorce, Raphael," she interrupted. "My lawyer will contact yours. I hope we can resolve everything civilly for our son's sake, but our marriage is over." Seeing resignation finally appear on Raphael's face was painful but also liberating. It was the closure she needed to move on. The consequences of the scandal also affected Raphael professionally. His company's board of directors decided to temporarily suspend him until the situation calmed down and the company's image was no longer associated with the scandal. The news was widely reported in specialized business media. Isabella suffered an even worse fate. In addition to cancelled contracts, she lost her position as a consultant at several art galleries. No one wanted to be associated with someone who had attacked a pregnant woman in public. She tried to defend herself on social media, posting public apologies and claiming she was going through a difficult time, but public opinion had already irrevocably turned against her. Mary Ann started therapy following Beatrice's suggestion. The sessions with Dr. Helen Newman, a psychologist specializing in trauma and life transitions, were fundamental to her emotional recovery. In the sessions, Mary Ann finally allowed herself to process all the pain, anger, and sense of betrayal she had been carrying. Therapy also helped her prepare for single motherhood. Mary Ann was afraid of not being enough, of not being able to give her son everything he deserved without a present father. But Dr. Helen helped her see that she was stronger than she imagined, that she had survived one of the most painful experiences a person can go through, and emerged on the other side more resilient. Months passed, and Mary Ann's belly grew. She moved into her own apartment, smaller than the one she had shared with Raphael, but cozy and full of light. She decorated the baby's room with shades of mint green and soft yellow, filling it with plush toys and keepsakes that Beatrice and other friends gave her. Raphael tried to be present during the pregnancy, asking to accompany her to appointments and ultrasounds. Mary Ann allowed it, not for him, but because she knew the baby deserved to have a father in his life, even if the parents weren't together. But she maintained clear boundaries. Raphael was her son's father, but he was no longer her husband, no longer her confidant. On a September morning, 3 months after the incident at the art gala, Mary Ann woke up feeling the first contractions. She was in her 38th week of gestation, and her body had finally decided it was time to bring her son into the world. Beatrice drove her to the hospital, calling Raphael on the way. The labor was long but without complications. And when Mary Ann finally held her son in her arms for the first time, looking at that small, perfect face, she felt a wave of love so intense that all the pains of the past seemed distant and insignificant. "Luke," she whispered, kissing the baby's forehead. "My little Luke." Raphael arrived at the hospital an hour later, and Mary Ann allowed him to meet their son. Seeing Raphael hold Luke for the first time was strange and moving at the same time. He cried, silent tears rolling down his face as he looked at the child who was half of him. "He's perfect," Raphael said, his voice choked. "Thank you, Mary Ann. Thank you for giving me this gift." Mary Ann didn't reply, just watched father and son, knowing that would be the type of relationship they would have from then on. Co-parents, nothing more. In the weeks that followed Luke's birth, Mary Ann discovered a strength within herself she didn't know she possessed. The sleepless nights, the constant feedings, the endless diapers, none of it scared her. She had faced betrayal, public humiliation, the pain of separation. Caring for her son was a challenge, but it was a challenge full of love and purpose. And for the first time in a long time, Mary Ann looked to the future and saw possibilities, not just pain. 6 months after Luke's birth, Mary Ann was unrecognizable, not physically, but in essence. There was a lightness in her movements, a sparkle in her eyes that hadn't existed before. She had lost the pregnancy weight and regained her figure. But more importantly, she had regained something far more valuable: her self-esteem, her confidence, her sense of identity that didn't depend on being beside a man. Luke was a calm and smiling baby, with his mother's dark eyes and rebellious curls that promised to be as difficult to tame as his father's. Mary Ann looked at that little being and felt gratitude for everything she had been through, because that suffering had led her to this point, to a motherhood that filled her in a way she never imagined possible. Beatrice continued to be her rock, her anchor on difficult days, but Mary Ann had expanded her support network, making new friends in mothers' groups, reconnecting with old friends she had neglected during the years of her marriage. She was no longer alone, nor did she feel that way. Raphael's divorce had been finalized a month earlier, a surprisingly smooth process considering the circumstances. Raphael had accepted all the terms proposed by Mary Ann, agreeing to the division of assets and Luke's visitation schedule. He saw his son twice a week, always under supervision in the first few months, and was gradually building his own relationship with the boy. Raphael's professional life had partially recovered. He had returned to the company, but in a less prestigious position, and had lost several important contracts. People had long memories, and the scandal still followed him like a shadow. But he was trying to rebuild, and Mary Ann generously hoped he would succeed, not for him, but for Luke, who deserved a stable and present father. Isabella Carter had practically disappeared from the London social scene. Rumours said she had moved to Edinburgh, trying to start over in a city where her face wasn't immediately recognised. Mary Ann rarely thought of her, and when she did, it was without anger, just a vague curiosity about how someone could allow such destructive emotions to control them. On a March afternoon, as the summer heat finally began to subside, Mary Ann received an unexpected invitation. It was from Henry Albright, the artist who had filmed the incident and become an unlikely ally. He was organising a new exhibition at the Royal Academy of Art's Pavilion, and he wanted Mary Ann to be his special guest. At first, Mary Ann hesitated. Returning to that place where everything had happened seemed too big a step. But then she realised that was exactly why she needed to go. She needed to prove to herself that that place no longer held power over her, that she could be there and feel only peace. Beatrice offered to look after Luke during the event night, and Mary Ann accepted. She chose a navy blue dress. That accentuated her eyes and wore her hair loose in natural waves. When she looked in the mirror before leaving, she saw a woman completely different from the one who had been there 6 months earlier, scared, hurt, and lost. Now she saw a strong, resilient woman, ready to face anything life threw her way. The Royal Academy of Art's Pavilion was as dazzling as Mary Ann remembered. The lights, the polished marble, the carefully arranged artworks, everything created that atmosphere of exclusive elegance. But this time, Mary Ann didn't feel the weight of anxiety, only a genuine appreciation for the beauty around her. Henry received her personally at the entrance, smiling warmly. "Mary Ann, what a joy that you came. I was afraid you'd refuse the invitation." "I thought about refusing," Mary Ann admitted, "but then I realized I couldn't let such a beautiful place remain associated only with bad memories." Henry guided her through the exhibition, explaining his works with contagious passion. He had created a series of installations about new beginnings and transformation, themes that resonated deeply with Mary Ann's journey. One of the works in particular touched her, a sculpture of a phoenix made from fragments, of broken mirrors, reflecting light in 1,000 different directions. "It's about how we can rebuild ourselves from broken pieces," Henry explained, "and how our new form can be even more beautiful than the original." Mary Ann felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, of recognition and healing. "It's perfect," As she circulated through the event, Mary Ann noticed the glances. Some people recognized her. She could see it in their eyes. But the looks were not of pity or embarrassment. They were of respect, even admiration. She had become a symbol of strength for many women who had seen her maintain her dignity in an impossible situation. It was while she was admiring an abstract painting that someone approached. "Excuse me, you're Mary Ann Allister, aren't you?" Mary Ann turned and saw a man approximately her age, perhaps a few years older, with greying hair at the temples and kind eyes. "I am. My name is David Campbell," he introduced himself. "I'm an architect and a great admirer of Henry's work. I also wanted to say that I followed your story, and I find your courage admirable." Mary Ann felt her cheeks blush slightly. "Thank you. That's kind of you to say." They talked for a few minutes about art, architecture, and discovered common interests. David was divorced, had 2 children from previous marriages, and there was something about his presence that was comfortable and genuine. When he asked for her number to perhaps get coffee sometime, Mary Ann was surprised to accept. It wasn't about replacing Raphael or rushing into a new relationship. It was about being open to possibilities, about not closing her heart just because she had been hurt before. Later that night, as Mary Ann was in the pavilion garden, the same garden where everything had happened, she felt a familiar presence. She turned and saw Raphael standing a few meters away. He looked different too, thinner, with worry lines etched on his face that hadn't been there before. "Mary Ann," he said softly, "I didn't know you would come." "Henry invited me," Mary Ann explained. "And you?" "I was invited too. He's trying to help my company recover, offering to make some partnerships." He paused. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." An uncomfortable silence hung between them. Finally, Raphael spoke again. "I wanted you to know that Isabella tried to contact Samihi a few weeks ago. She said she wanted to apologize, to try to start over." Mary Ann felt her body tense but kept her voice calm. "And what did you say?" Raphael looked directly into her eyes. "I said I wanted nothing more to do with her, that I had learned my lesson the hard way, that what we had, if we had anything real at all, had cost me my marriage, my family, almost my career. It wasn't worth it." Mary Ann nodded slowly. "I'm glad you learned something from all this, Raphael. Truly." He took a step closer. "Mary Ann, I know it's over between us. I know I destroyed any chance of reconciliation, but I wanted you to know that I regret it every day, that I look at Luke and see everything I lost, everything that could have been. I regret it too, Raphael. I regret not trusting my instincts sooner. I regret staying in a marriage that was already dead for so long. But I don't regret where I am now." She paused. "I hope you find happiness truly, but it won't be with me." Raphael nodded, finally accepting what Mary Ann had been trying to say for months. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be a good father to Luke, since I failed to be a good husband to you." "That's all I ask," Mary Ann said gently. Raphael turned to leave, but stopped and looked back one last time. "You deserve to be happy, Mary Ann. I hope you find someone who gives you everything I couldn't." As he walked away, Mary Ann took a deep breath, feeling as if a final weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She looked around the garden, at the same Japanese lanterns that had illuminated the night 6 months earlier. But now she didn't see the scene of her humiliation. She saw only a beautiful garden on a pleasant night. She went back inside and found Henry talking with a group of investors. He saw her and waved, and Mary Ann waved back, feeling gratitude for that man who had become a friend when she needed it most. The night ended with Mary Ann returning home to the apartment where Luke slept peacefully under Beatrice's care. She entered her son's room and simply stood there watching him sleep, his small chest rising and falling with soft breaths. Everything she had gone through, all the pain, all the humiliation, all the sadness, had been worth it to get to this point, to have that boy, to discover her own strength, to learn that she could survive alone and even thrive. Mary Ann didn't know what the future would bring. Perhaps David would become something more than an acquaintance. Perhaps not. Perhaps she would remain alone for a long time, focusing only on being a mother and rebuilding her professional life. And she was fine with any of those possibilities, because for the first time in years, Mary Ann was truly at peace with herself. And that, she realized, was the greatest victory of all. Dear listeners, we hope that Mary Ann's story and her journey of pain, overcoming, and new beginnings has touched your hearts. Sometimes life's most difficult experiences transform us into the strongest versions of ourselves, and Mary Ann is proof of that. If this narrative resonated with you, if you saw yourself at any point in Mary Ann's story, or if you simply appreciated this emotional journey, we ask that you show your support. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the stories we lovingly prepare. Leave a like if the story moved you, and please share your thoughts, your own experiences, or simply how you felt accompanying Mary Ann's transformation in the comments. Every comment, every interaction motivates us to continue bringing stories that explore the complexity of life, love, betrayal, and redemption. Every day we bring unique narratives that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. We can't wait to share the next story with you. Until then, take care. And remember that, like Mary Ann, you too are stronger than you imagine.